we are starting with the national security in the digital age. And our first speaker is Dr. Doron Feldman from the University of Texas at Austin. Is Doron here? Yes, hi. And he will talk about Israel narrative battle, adopting Taiwan's playbook. Please, Doron.
Okay, hi everyone. It's really a great honor, and I'm really happy to be here to return basically to my home institution, where I did my PhD, my MA, my BA in political science and international relations, and where I also worked in Yuval Ne'eman Workshop as the cyber research program manager. And unfortunately, I don't know why the presentation is not here, so I'm just going to speak and read from my paper, so forgive me for this. And okay, so today I'm going to discuss a country that I had the honor and the opportunity to visit for a 3-month research period during the spring. This is Taiwan, a country that experienced millions of cyber attacks and influence campaigns, and which has developed a creative and very interesting approach to counter the digital threats and the disinformation threats. My argument in this speak is that Israel should adopt at least some of Taiwan's aspect and approach with its own adaptation to the threats and to the environment, and not only to fortify Israel's social and internal digital resilience, but also to defend its global status, image, and legitimacy, which have been under serious attack since October 7. In other words, we are seeing that today the propaganda campaigns, the disinformation and influence operations are not only directed inward into the societies, the country itself, but also they aim to shape the geopolitical outcomes. These two forms of threats can overlap, and thus there is an urgent need from Israel to develop and implement a much more effective and comprehensive response that considers both threats. So we could see that during the sorts of iron war that Israel faced unprecedented intensified cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns, which were apparently orchestrated by its rivals, its enemies, first and foremost Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood movement, Iran, Turkey, and unfortunately from also other countries like Qatar, China, and others, and their affiliates, of course. And we could see that while the campaigns were intensified and coordinated alongside the physical battlefield, they demonstrated how Israel was not ready to respond. Therefore, we could see that how Taiwan has developed, as I mentioned in the beginning, a comprehensive, although not perfect, approach over the recent decade to tackle with determination this kind of disinformation threats. Thank you. And while it's still insisting on preserving democracy and the values of freedom of speech, freedom of press, and what Taiwan did was very interesting because we could see that the Taiwanese government avoided from regulating or implementing heavy regulation on the social media platforms and the internet and the users, partially because of its past as an undemocratic country, and also due to the insistence of the civil society that rejected any kind of regulation over the freedom of speech, the freedom of the internet, and forth on. And therefore, we could see how the civil society stood up and until today is leading the efforts to fight against the disinformation campaigns and the influence operations, which of course most of them are originating from China. So we could see that the network of civil society organizations that began to operate in Taiwan, each of them are doing different things. So we could see that, and this is something that I discovered during the research that I did in Taiwan, that we could see that there is kind of division of labor within this kind of ecosystem of civil society organization. For example, the Taiwanese have Double Think Lab, which focus on studying the disinformation phenomena and threats, and trying also to train the people, the citizens of Taiwan, to confront or to be aware to the threat, whereas COFACT, for example, another organization, is focusing on activating and employing chatbots that help the people to basically to define what is true, what is false in the digital domain. So in addition to this, the Taiwanese government also acted and established the Ministry of Digital Affairs and also what they call MAJIB, which is the Ministry of Justice Investigation Bureau. This organization responsible for tracking, analyzing, and tackling the various degrees of disinformation threats in real time, and they provide an appropriate response. So I think that it is the time for Israel, because of the war, to establish a dedicated governmental unit that will have the necessary powers, the budgets, and the ability to coordinate with the different governmental organizations to implement, to adopt a strategy to confront the disinformation threat. In addition, in order to, if we discussed until now the internal threats, now I think there is also need, as I mentioned in the beginning, to confront the external threats that Israel faced in the digital domain from the different bad actors that I mentioned, and therefore there is, I think Israel should consider reducing the role of the, in my view, the outdated Hasbara concept, and to employ the Taiwanese 2-2-2 approach, which basically rests on every time that a malicious content is discovered within the social media, the internet, and so on, then the government is responding in 20 minutes. They have 20 minutes to respond with 2 items, videos, or posts, or images, and no more than 200 words. And the goal is basically to attract users to read and to consume the positive narrative rather than the negative and the falsified one. In addition to this, and I have to finish, of course, that Israel must leverage its relative advantages in AI, cyber, and tech. And also, it is the time to expand and extend the cooperation not only between the different sectors, as Israel did 15 years ago when it became a world leader in cybersecurity. Now is the time to pool resources and expertise together, and also to collaborate with the different international partners around the world, including the Jewish diaspora, which really, I think, assisted Israel and during the war. And lastly, I think there is a need also to consider exposing the origins of the disinformation campaigns, maybe with legal actions, and their budgets, of course. This is also something that Israel must do. But I would say, really to conclude, is that this is the time for Israel to be much more proactive in the digital domain and maybe go into the offensive and not only stay in a defensive position. So thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss today.